we are for another episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, episode number 179, being recorded on Thursday, September 4th, 2025 at 8:08 p.m. I don't know if the microphone is picking up the background noise or not. I have the dehumidifier, which is on, and I have had to briefly turn on the air conditioner to get some of the humidity out, so hopefully the microphone doesn't pick it up too much. I'll turn it off in a little bit, and maybe the audio will be a bit more clear. So this isn't like a top-end kind of microphone or anything. It does the job that it needs to. The previous one I had was on the fritz and was already on its way out when I started the show. And here we are now with this one. But anyways, it's Thursday. It's September. We're going to get into that fall mentality. We're going to start to shift what kind of literature we're going to read, what kind of films we're going to watch, the mentality we're going to get into in the next part of the year to think about where we are in our goals, where we need to go, what we have achieved already, and moving forward. This is a really fun time of the year. A lot of things happening, a lot of holidays around the same time. It's just a very cozy time of the year. I love the fall weather. Getting into the winter is going to be totally great, but definitely don't want to rush it. You don't want to be like, oh man, Friday's almost here, this and that, because they'd be saying that again and again. And then next thing you know, it'll be like, people always say like, oh man, the year's flying by so fast, or oh man, the month's, flying by so fast, and you go, man, it feels like this happened just recently, and it was a couple years ago, and it's just like, yeah, because they're always talking about, wanting to get to that end of the work week, or the end of the day, you want to be somewhere. And it's all about just cherishing really kind of every moment that we have. And that doesn't mean, you shouldn't feel that way. It's completely understandable if you're in a crummy situation to kind of want to be like, or like, man, I want this, I want the work day to be over. Or, oh man, I wish I was, doing this instead. Or maybe you're going somewhere like, oh, I wish I was there already. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not, it's kind of like just you going through that every day and just wanting to be like, oh man, well, let's got tomorrow, because then it's like the next thing you know, tomorrow turns into next week, turns into next month, and it never ends until eventually you're like, older, and you're like, man, I can't believe those days I took for granted. People talk about like, oh man, I used to do this, used to do that. I didn't realize how good I was having it then, or I didn't realize, how nostalgic I would be for it. So it's just, just being aware of our surroundings, being aware of time, and using it to our advantage to further our own lives, and to work on, our artistic goals, to, watch films, or read books, or write, or direct, whatever it is, man, whatever it is that, you feel is most important with your time. This is the Cozy Corner of Cinema, after all, so we talk about films on the show, we talk about books, talk about life. It is so great to be here, and the cats are enjoying the space as well. They're running around acting like madmen, so hopefully I don't have to pause too many times, if at all, to stop them from biting on a wire they shouldn't be biting. Oh my goodness. Anyways, what was I going to talk about first this show? I kind of got a little lost in my train of thought there, but it was great to revisit The Hidden Fortress from 1958, directed by Akira Kurosawa. And I had watched this film originally a couple years ago for the first time when I was doing my top 10 favorites of 1958, and I don't remember if this actually made the list or not. For a while, I was getting this mixed up with The Burmese Harp, I believe. I think just because they're both Asian films, and I watched them around the same time from what I can remember. And I might actually find it here. I don't know if it made the list or not. I don't think it did. Now I'm thinking of it. Man, how far back did I record this episode? Holy moly. 1958. Yeah, I don't. It's not on here. It was number 15, which I would probably bring up. That's why I don't. These my opinions change so much that. And actually, I'm pretty confident in this top 10 here. I got. If you don't want to listen to the episode, then I guess I'll just rattle off my top 10 really quick. Number 10 was Elevator to the Gallows. Number 9 was The Big Country. Number 8 was Man of the West. Number 7, A Night to Remember. Number 6, The Blob. Number 5, Separate Tables. Number 4, Carve Her Name with Pride. Number 3, The Ballad of Narayama. Number 2, The Lovers. And number 1 was Vertigo. And on top of just reading off those films, there's actually a director who will come up later if I have the time to. But yeah, The Hidden Fortress is one that I liked quite a bit more on the second viewing. I had seen this theatrically. I've seen a couple of Kurosawa films this year theatrically. I've seen this year... oh, no, wait, I saw Seven Samurai theatrically last year. That's right. So far this year I've seen Yojimbo, High and Low, and Ikaru. And Kurosawa is such a fascinating filmmaker because he's one of these guys who I often find myself struggling to connect with a lot of his films. I find I have liked everything I've seen of his, but I don't think I've loved anything of his I've seen. I can appreciate the incredible craftsmanship, and I can appreciate the storytelling he does in a lot of films, but I think two big problems that I have with the majority of the films of his I've seen are, number one, I don't often have a strong emotional connection to the characters, and I don't think that's his fault entirely. In a lot of older films, I think there was a tend to exaggerate and to make things very big and melodramatic, and that's something that I do have a problem with some of his films. I think that might just be a lot of Japanese films from that time is very big, very characters really being animated, and so I find myself disconnected there. And two, I find the run times and the pacing really off. And I'm not just going to sit here and be like, this is why that. Kurosawa is a great filmmaker, and I've liked everything I've seen of his. But admittedly, those are two problems that I really have struggled with. Because I watch High and Low, and I think the first half of that is so good. The build-up, the fake-out, the exchange, it's all great. And then you get to the second half when I think it really takes a nosedive pacing-wise. And it's still good, but I am not as engaged because I feel like that should be the third act and not the second half of the film. And I say all this because when it comes to The Hidden Fortress, it really kind of negates all of the issues that I have with it. And I think, I said it on my letterbox, but I really do, from what I've seen, this is probably my favorite of his work. I won't talk about it too much. I have talked about it. Well, actually, I guess I haven't talked about it before. It didn't make it a top 10. But it's a really solid adventure film, man. There's a lot of comedy in this, a lot of intentional comedy, a lot of well-earned drama. So the fight scenes as well, really well done. There's one in the second half of the film that they talk a lot about Toshiro Mifune's character, plays his character General Kuroda Makabe. No, I can't say that. I'm not even going to try to say that. Anyways, they talk about how great of a swordsman he is, and they really, what I like about it is that they really take the time to show off, like one scene in particular where he really, has this extended fight scene that is so well done. And I got to pause it right here because the cat is about to jump on something he shouldn't be. And we're back. That was only one pause so far. Looks like it's not too bad. But anyways, yeah. By having this extended scene of these two fighting, it shows how strong of a general that he is, or was, so to speak. But it's basically, you have these two characters, these kind of poor characters, and there's this princess played by, if I can get the name up right here, and if IMDb's website wants to cooperate with me. Oh my gosh, IMDb, good lord, this website is driving me bananas. There's a ad that is taking up almost the entire page, and now the page will not even load. So I can't tell you the name right here, but I will say there are two characters that are poor. They're trying to get there's some gold that they're trying to find, and basically they come across a way that this princess who is wanted, and there's a great big reward, so everybody's trying to find her, and Toshiro Mifune comes into the mix, and the story unfolds from there. He is general. He is, very good at what he does. He has a much stronger grasp on the landscape around, knowing how to get around certain mountains and how to go certain ways. And it's sort of this all kind of unfolding of everybody slowly starting to realize what's going on. And, with these characters in this, I mean, they're silly. There was a lot of intentional comedy, but I think the stuff with Toshiro Mifune and the actress, who I'd love to tell you her name, but IMDb does not want to cooperate, they really are able to kind of ground the film in a way where the silliness is not too is not too overbearing, I should say, but works altogether as a whole. And I should say the actress Misa. Oh my gosh, the ad popped back up. I'm not going to watch this television show on IMDb. Oh my goodness. Misa Uhura. I don't know if that's how you say her name. But she's great in the film. She has to kind of forge a plan with them to get out of it. But and it's one that I think, with it being a little shorter, it's 2 hours 6 minutes. The pacing, I would say, for the most part, is all consistent. It's a real, it moves along at a real firm pace. It takes its time, but also never becomes boring. I will say the third act, maybe the last 10 minutes or so, is the only time when I felt like it was starting to not maybe not overstay its welcome, but it was basically you're getting to the same conclusion. But I thought that they kind of just repeated themselves a little bit. But for somebody who, like me, who I like Kurosawa. I'm not the biggest enthusiast. Even I can tell you how strong of a film this is. And that's not to say I don't like his films. I've said that before. I'm just not quite as enthusiastic about his films, while being able to understand his significance and importance as a filmmaker, and as just a huge inspiration to all these other great filmmakers. But The Hidden Fortress, I think, is one that was a great revisit. It's one that I really liked a lot. I think this either... Oh, I mean, maybe not. I was thinking this was coming to 4K, but I think the Burmese Harp, which ironically I'm getting mixed up with again, is coming to 4K. Or maybe it's already come to 4K. I don't know. Wait, what year was the Burmese Harp? Was that 56 or 58? Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, that was 56. Why am I getting these two mixed up? Holy moly, that's embarrassing. Okay, so I guess I didn't watch them around the same time. I don't know what other film I'm talking about then. Bizarre. Okay. Interesting. Anyways, well, The Burmese Harp's a great film as well, by Kana Ishikawa. That's a really great film. That film and another one of his films just came to 4K, I believe, or it's coming to 4K. Either way, they have similar kind of art styles. You can see, when they put out when Criterion puts out certain films with the same filmmaker all at once, they'll do kind of similar sorts of art like that, or at least in this case they did. But anyway, speaking of great, filmmakers. It's great seeing I try not to watch trailers too often, but I did see that the trailer for Megadoc has been released. This is going to be distributed by Utopia Films, about the making of Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. And I assume it's just the making of it. I mean, I'm curious to see if they get into the kind of reception that the film garnered. I mean, in the trailer, Coppola does say that he knows he's making something really out there and very weird. But I think it's interesting that this kind of addendum where you put your whole, you put this kind of passion project and you put your money on the line, and then it's met with general kind of disdain and real kind of negative reviews. And that's what I'm saying before, is that a lot of these films you really can't judge, for any film, you really can't judge fully until real time has passed, because something like this is swinging for so much, and whether or not it works or doesn't work is ultimately your prerogative. But I think an immediate kind of judgment on the film is, for really any film, I think it's kind of difficult to really kind of pinpoint down. Because even when I'm talking about before, my favorite films of 58, I mean, I watched those films however many years ago I did that episode, and now, even though the top 10 might stay the same, a lot of those other picks I know will, or a lot of those other rankings on there, I know are going to be moved around. And that's just how, you are with any kind of art, whether it be, films or music or paintings or anything like that, or maybe a food dish you liked at one point, maybe you had too much of, is how you feel about it at one point is not the same how you're going to feel about it later on, or at least it's not very common, I should say. So to immediately kind of judge a film as like just some extremities, whether positively or negatively, one of the best or one of the worst films ever, was such an extreme kind of statement. It really kind of makes you want to take a step back and go, okay, this really needs to be processed and reassessed later down the line, however long that is. Just let it kind of sit with you, because there's plenty of films I watch. that I don't like, and it kind of just leaves my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I saw it, wasn't very good, whatever. Then there's other films where I don't like it, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm just like, huh, it really has me thinking. And I think there is something to that, and I think there is something more interesting than just a film you don't like that's kind of disposable, like generic kind of, comedy or horror movie or anything like that. It's just kind of like, all right, you forget about it in a week. So I mean, I think Megalopolis, above all else, is a memorable film. I happen to really like the film, but I don't quite buy into the whole like one of the worst, of the year, like one of the worst ever. That's much more egregious. But I think the swings is taking are just so fascinating and so interesting. I love hearing Coppola talk about his influences like Kurosawa, and hearing what he wanted to do with the film. I'm really looking forward to the documentary. It's coming out in October at the time of this recording. And it's getting a limited release, so hopefully I will get an opportunity to see it theatrically. If not, then I'll see it when Utopia inevitably, well, I assume inevitably because they have their own Blu-ray line, but presumably releases a Blu-ray on that. So good stuff there. Will be watched when the opportunity arises. Speaking of both great filmmakers and 1958, let's talk about a great filmmaker in a pretty controversial film of his. Pretty Baby from 1978, directed by Louis Malle, who popped up twice on my favorite films of 1958 top 10 list. He did Elevator to the Gallows, and at my number 2 was The Lovers, which I think might be my favorite of his work. I haven't seen all of Louis Malle's films. There's quite a gap, actually, I haven't seen. But Pretty Baby, a pretty, no pun intended, notorious, well-known film, 1978, starring a young Brooke Shields. This also has Keith Carradine and Susan Sarandon and Barbara Steele. It's a film that's a film that the production and the content I feel has probably overshadowed the film itself. This was based off. I don't know if it's based off exactly a true story, but I think it's based off an account. This takes place in the early 1900s in New Orleans. A young Brooke Shields plays his character Violet. She is a prostitute in this old kind of brothel. She starts with, she's with Susan Sarandon's there. I don't remember if Susan Sarandon was her ma or not. I do apologize. It's been a few weeks since I've watched this. My memory may be a little fuzzy. But it's the day ins and days out, as well as the changing of the times. We're starting to get into these other kind of characters that come into the mix. We have Belloc, played by Keith Carradine, who starts to become involved in both women's lives and the complications that arise from that. The complications that Brooke Shields and Susan Sarandon kind of get into with one another, start to kind of distance themselves. Anyways, I should also say that it was Susan. Brooke Shields plays Susan Sarandon's daughter in the film. It's a real good looking film. The thing with the film is that you watch a lot of films. I keep saying film that take place during a certain time period, and you sometimes buy it, sometimes don't. I just watched a film the other day that was set in the 80s, and it looked like contemporary 2025. It just didn't fit it at all. Put like a After Effects filter on it, and then it's just like, oh, it's the 80s. It's like, okay, whatever. But here, it's shot by Bergman's DP, Van Nyqvist, and it looks great. I watched this on the Keynote Blu-ray, and it looked really sharp. I don't know, restoration-wise how this went, but it looks very good. But I think this is one where, like I was saying before, the content of the film, you have a young Brooke Shields in the film. The subject matter alone you're dealing with, and then also the fact, it's a very sexual film. It's a film about sex. It's a film that it doesn't have a lot of sex in it, but the constant kind of sexual themes going on. The fact that Brooke Shields is this 12-year-old girl, and these guys are really are interested in her, and the idea of marrying this girl. It's one that it's been so talked about and it's been so analyzed, and Brooke Shields herself has said multiple times that it was a completely fine experience for her. She's always defended Louis Malle. She has always sort of negated the the controversy on the film saying this is child pornography, which is what the film was labeled as, because you're dealing with, a child in these very sexual situations, in a sexual environment, I should say. And also with that, you have, a nude scene with a 12-year-old girl. And it's one of these films, as I'm watching, everything I've read up on the film, I firmly believe, at least from everything Brooke Shields has said to interviews, I don't sincerely believe that Louis Malle made this with a sinister intent. The way that I see it, I think this is a film that, besides having only been able to be made at a time and a place, I don't think that you can't do a film like this, dealing with these very kind of adult themes with a younger kind of character, and their, you could say, coming of age. I think it's more so somebody having to force kind of coming of age. I wish I could remember the film that I watched. It was a French film that I watched a little while ago, and it was interesting because I watched that around the same time I watched Peppermint Soda, which was also a coming of age sort of film, but dealt with a young girl's perspective. And I remember that film as well, I think, being a bit more egregious with sort of the sexual themes with like a young boy in that film. That film. I don't know. I don't think fully worked for me because there were just those parts that don't. They don't sit right. Here, I think the problem is that some of it is just so sloppily put together. I think that when you're dealing with anything of the sort of a kid in this environment, there's a way to do it without having to walk on eggshells. I'm not saying that it has to be a thing where you have to be very what's the word I'm looking for? You have to be very particular about it. But I also do think that the way they handle it is not the best, because on one hand, the film itself I just don't find very interesting. I don't think this is one of Louis Malle's best. I'm not super familiar with a lot of his American work. I know Atlantic City was another big film that I haven't seen. I'm really only familiar with his French work. So I can't say for sure if it's a lost in translation sort of thing. I mean, even 78 for this kind of thing still seems a little late, but I just don't think it was handled all that great, especially when we get to the third act, when we start to get into more of the relationship between Brooke Shields and Keith Carradine. That all I don't think it's well directed. I don't think it's really put together very well. I think the film is worth watching. So, and you could be saying like, "Hey, Dan, you don't like, Dan, you're not crazy about the film, but here you are talking about it, this and that." And I'm not here to like dog the film or anything like that. I shall say Francis Ford is in the film, which is very cool. But I think it's a film that's important to watch, kind of with context, because I was talking a little while ago about the possession of Joel Delaney and Sweet movie. Because I remember people were talking about, something like a Serbian film where they're like, oh man, this film, they're putting kids in danger. And I'm like, well, I mean, whether you like or dislike the film, I think the difference between a Serbian film and something like this or Sweet movie is night and day. Because you're getting these, for one, of just when it was made, of course. And then two, I think when you have these young kids kind of in the same frame as these events, it's very different than having someone reacting to something. Same thing with like Mysterious Skin, the Greg Araki film. That's a really excellent film, and that film specifically, is able to kind of deal with this very touchy subject, but at the same time does it in a very classy way, as to one, not be exploitive, not revel in it, God no, but deals with that subject matter in a way where it feels very honest. Even some of the kind of the more questionable parts of his characters' sort of relationships, and it feels sincere in a way that it does kind of, I don't think, totally work for me. On top of that, I just don't think the film is very interesting itself. I mean, it's almost 2 hours, and I think if you're watching this kind of film for, it's a controversial film and people have talked about it, and this is getting, taken out of theaters, this is getting banned. Even now, people are still talking about the longevity of the film. And there's actually a documentary on Hulu that I wanted to watch in relation to this, but I just didn't get an opportunity to, or I should say I forgot to, which was, I think it's called Brooke Shields, Pretty Baby, about kind of her career. Because I think she actually did another nude scene not too long after this. And, was it Blue Lagoon? What movie was that where the chick got naked? I think it was Blue Lagoon from 1980. Is Brooke Shields in this? Yes, she is. A Story of Natural Love. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. What does this say here? When Brooke Shields' original nude body double broke her back, the producers ended up asking Kathy Trout, I don't know, whom they had hired to catch and train dolphins, if she was willing to do this because she was the same body type as Shields. Trout agreed and had no issue. Okay, so maybe she wasn't nude in that. I don't know. It's just interesting. I remember hearing about this. Oh, wait, what does this say? The movie remains one of the most controversial releases of the 20th century. The movie not only hit headlines when it was released, it led to a government inquiry, and Brooke Shields was called to testify before the United States Congress. The young actress confirmed that body doubles had been used for any naked scenes, and her breasts were always covered by hair or clothing. During a television interview, she said the nude scenes weren't hard because I didn't do them as far as the love scene goes. It was just like another job. So I guess it was maybe the love scene people had a problem with. This was 2 years after Pretty Baby. So it's interesting that that would happen. I mean, because if she's, I don't know how old she, I think she may have been 12 when she made Pretty Baby. I actually don't know. I probably should look that up beforehand because that probably would provide more context. But it's interesting these two films being so close to one another. But I think it is worth watching for curiosity's sake. If you're expecting something kind of crazy and controversial, it's really not that. I think it's more dull than anything. But the parts that got the film in trouble, I could see why it would be an issue. I could see why probably people got upset about it. But I also understand where the film is coming from, trying to deal with these heavier kind of topics, and these topics that maybe back in the 70s they were more willing to kind of go with. Because then you even watch something like Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, which again, I think that film is more egregious than this, because you have young, Mario Van Peebles, fully naked. That kid's, 12 at the time, on top of another fully naked woman. To me, these are more egregious examples than something like a Serbian film, which is just, there's no one in frame of that film. It's not like they're doing this and there's kids in the frame, man. So that's why I think the extremity of that film is always always throws the film under the bus. And I'm like, man, you got to go back and look at some of these other films, man. If you want to, raise your pitchforks. At the same time, it's also like, well, these films came out how many years ago? You still, you can only go on about them so much. Especially now, the more time goes on, the less kind of context that we have. But I think it's important to at least acknowledge these kinds of films. But Pretty Baby, it's interesting. I was just very middle of the road on it. I didn't dislike it, but it's not one that really outside of the controversy. I don't know how much there really is to go back to on this, or at least to make it kind of noteworthy. Besides, you have a young Brooke Shields, you have this great filmmaker. Cinematography is really gorgeous, but it's an interesting film. I think it's worth watching. With a certain kind of context, I guess, knowing it, because with Sweet Movie, I mean, that's a different. I think Sweet Movie is actually a good movie, but I understand that is also a film that is that one sequence is a part of a bigger film rather than the whole film being about that sort of thing. But I've always been curious if Criterion would ever do a re-release of that, because it's funny, I have that 2-disc DVD they put out a long time ago, and they haven't re-released it since. I mean, there's tons of films they haven't re-released since. I'm just saying that one is such a, maybe not even so notorious. I feel like it's still not super talked about, unless you're looking for these kind of not just controversial films, but these really kind of transgressive sort of. You can almost say dangerous films. That's what some people were saying a while ago about certain films. Like, oh, it's one of the most dangerous films because of this and this and that. I don't mean dangerous like, actor got in like a car crash or something like that. I mean, I guess maybe you could do that to a certain extent, but dangerous in like, man, who is making this? Who is funding this? And that's. Without that context, you kind of have to judge these films on their own. With that context, I do think it provides a different kind of light and perspective. But yeah, it's not normally one. It's not a film I normally kind of talk about in the show, because I'm very adamant of the idea of just, if I'm, if I have your ears for 30 minutes or so, I want to turn you guys on to something that, something that I think was worthy of your time. And so even something like Pretty Baby, which I'm not really crazy about, I do think it's worthy of your time, and I do think it's interesting to kind of talk about this in the context of those other films, of Joel Delaney, a Sweet Movie, of what was the other one I was talking about? I'm losing my mind here, man. But worth a watch nonetheless, I would say, with context provided. But yeah, man, kind of losing my train of thought here, guys. It's been a long day, so I'm going to wrap it up right here. Hey, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening, sincerely. There's so much to get done. The cats need to be pet. I got to do that right now. Oh my gosh, he wants pets, and here I am recording into this microphone. So, hey, you guys take care, all the best, and until next time, that's all I got to say.